What exactly is going on with the man in the White House? What is going on with the current occupant? Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I hope you are having a good day today. I am a big fan of horror, especially horror that comes out of Blumhouse. They seem to really have tapped into a lot of things that are horrific going on today. One of those might be considered what's going on what's going on with the current occupant, which has been turned into a horror and part of a horror anthology that's actually on Hulu. It's part of the Into the Dark series. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy to participate.
Well, I'm honored to have on director Julius Ramsey, who directed The Current Occupant, part of this Blumhouse series. And it's about a guy who might be the president of the United States. He experienced a tragic event, and now we're seeing him being rehabilitated, or is he? That's the question that looms. I want to ask Julius, why is it that we're so obsessed with movies about the president of the United States? I mean, there are so many. I can't really, I can't think of one that's really been made into a horror film. I mean, maybe Jack Nicholson in Mars Attacks, but I think that there's something about the sort of majesty of the presidency and all that entails that makes it fascinating fodder for films, but never really seen it turned into horror. Where did this all come from?
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. Yes, it's very true. The only film I believe that I can think of, a horror film that related to the President of the United States, was The Omen 3,
Right.
which, well, I think it was Sam O'Neill. And then he played a guy who was either the president or right on the cusp of the presidency, but was actually the Antichrist. But aside from that, we're not aware of one. And that's one of the reasons that the idea was so appealing to my brother and me. I think as Americans, we have a tremendous sense of national pride and national identity. I think that's part of the American psyche. And the president, whether you like him or her, they are, in fact, the living embodiment of America as a nation. So there's this central preoccupation, I think, in the American psyche with the current occupant, with the president of the United States, where that person, for better or for worse, is always at the center of our thoughts when we think about our country. And so to us, it seemed like a natural extension of turning those thoughts into a nightmare with this film.
I'm just really surprised because we really haven't seen, I think Hollywood is kind of obsessed with the White House and the presidency and whatnot. And you've seen in different eras how you've seen a reflection of whoever the president is at that time. There's going to be a movie. It's somehow going to make its way into the movies. We really haven't seen much in the Trump era of films about the presidency. If I think about it, this might be, one of the first ones. Only one that really comes to mind. I love the way that you play it in the beginning, because there's almost even a Clockwork Orange kind of feel to it, where it's I'm sure, you know what? I'm glad I didn't watch the trailer for this film before I saw it, because trailers these days tend to ruin everything. But at least talk about the first act, where this is almost presented to the protagonist as this is going to be a therapy that's going to help you.
Sure. We're constantly trying to subvert expectations, and at the onset of the film, we don't know where he came from, how he got there, who he really is, nor does the protagonist. So the audience is learning about his condition and his situation and the way back to finding his true identity, along with the protagonist. That said, we do front load the film with an opening sequence. It's about 3 minutes long, that delves into images of the president and the presidency, and some impressionistic storyline of this event that occurred and is depicted in a way that leaves it somewhat open for interpretation, in the way that someone's disjointed fragments of their memory would be. So then in the first act of the film, we're really learning about this rehabilitation ward where our protagonist has found himself. And then as he begins to participate in these treatments, as it becomes more and more intense, we start to strongly suspect that they're not telling him the whole story.
Well, I mean, that's I have to compliment you that I love that it just keeps you guessing until the very end. So
thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean it's and you also the style of that you chose to shoot this, it's harrowing. I mean, what I really love about it is that it puts you, I kind of feel like I was experiencing all of this along with the, I don't want to say president because maybe not, but there are certain sequences that are really harrowing. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because you've directed episodes of The Walking Dead. Is that right?
I mean, yes, I have a pretty long background, working in genre, like in the horror and science fiction genre.
Well, tell me what led to like this, choosing this style, because I think that like, I mean, I'm sure you've talked to people who've seen it. It's really arresting in a sense. Your sense that you're really playing with a lot of tactile things. There's a lot of like I mentioned a Clockwork Orange. I mean, there's certain scenes where you're just feeling, well, I'm being assaulted with these images. What led to those choices? And I guess I'm answering my own question because it really was effective, is what I'm saying. But
thank you so much.
But tell me about that. Tell me about.
Sure. I mean, we wanted to do exactly what you're saying, in the sense of putting the audience, rooting them in the perspective of the protagonist, and creating a sense memory, a visceral experience that the audience is going to undergo along with our protagonist, Henry Cameron, the man who may be a paranoid schizophrenic or maybe the president of the United States. And so creating that sense of sensory, those sensory overload moments as a part of the sessions, the psychiatric experiments and process that he's undergoing, hopefully is going to root the audience in the same experience that he's experiencing.
Well, it definitely worked. I mean, there's some stuff. There's some stuff in there that's it's just horrific. But I mean, I guess I should expect that. I mean, it's a Blumhouse film, and I want to talk about working on something for Blumhouse. I just think that they have a sensibility in looking at horror that's very modern. I mean, it's I guess you could say ripped from the headlines, or just like this is in the zeitgeist. When you're pitching something, your brother wrote the script. Is that right? Yeah. When you're pitching when you're pitching something like this, is it like these are things you're just sort of clutching out of the air? Can you tell me about the process of working with a Blumhouse?
Sure. I mean, this was an idea that my brother and I had, and we had developed a rough storyline for it. And I had been talking with Into the Dark. I had worked with Blumhouse previously. I directed a little bit of the television version of The Purge. And so we had a relationship, and we had actually pitched another Into the Dark. But this one was very much in their wheelhouse. And so when they heard the idea, they absolutely loved it. And we went in and did a much more extensive pitch, an hour long or so. And my brother and I had taken the time to really develop the story. And from there, they were all aboard, full steam ahead. And so we made a deal. We went to work, and my brother wrote out a first draft of the script. And then, he and I developed it along with Blumhouse over the course of a few months before we went into production in January, pre-production in January, and started shooting it in February. And we finished, just about a week and a half before the COVID pandemic shut down the film industry. So we were really lucky to get the whole thing in the can.
Well, I'm really curious. First of all, congratulations to just get right at that cutoff. I'm really curious to see what comes from. I mean, it's almost like we're living right? A Blumhouse horror film right now with the lockdown, and the film industry is still not back. Movie theaters. I mean, I really think it's been a boon to things like streaming services, right? Like there's so much amazing content to catch up on. You mentioned you worked on The Purge. I'm a huge fan of I think the Purge films are such an incredible concept. Can you talk a little bit about your work on The Purge?
Sure. I mean, I worked on the television version that was done for USA. So it was a little different. I worked on the first season of it. But, it was a lot of fun. I mean, we had a free hand. We were shooting down in New Orleans to do a lot of really cool visual stuff and, play with a larger world, perhaps, than what you see in the feature films. With television, it's a bit more expansive in the sense that there are a lot more characters and subplots and events that occur as part of the larger mechanism of the Purge, because it is in this fictitious world occurring on a societal level. It's happening everywhere. So that was a lot of fun to get to play in that playground for a little while.
And as a working director in Hollywood on so many different projects, would you care to speculate on where we're headed with the entertainment industry? I've heard things like certain productions are talking about a lot of shooting overseas, or a lot of talk of doing kind of a barracks situation where the crew goes, you go away for 3-4 months, you're just all staying together. And that's it. You're not going to bars and restaurants. You are just sequestered for several months to make films. I'm assuming you're doing a lot of pitching over Zoom.
I am. Yeah. I can't really get into the details, but like my brother and I, we happen to have something that we've been developing that's a very new way of doing a television series, and we're not that the pandemic is good on any level, but the nature of our version of doing a television show is something that adheres to all the restrictions of what COVID's about. I mean, I guess, from my opinion, a more holistic level, in times of chaos, speed up transitions that are already in place and trends that are already occurring. But it's just like when a meteor hits the Earth, there's a lot of dinosaurs running around, and the mammals are going to take over. Things are going to change. Now, I can't sit here and tell you exactly how things are going to change, but I can say definitively, I mean, this is the most chaos the world has experienced since the end of World War II. There's no question about that. It's the most seismic event. And I think that anyone who doesn't think that every, like many sociological, technological, and cultural ways of doing things are going to change is doesn't quite have their eyes open. So I think it could be a very exciting period of time. And I think on a practical level, sure, big productions are going to pick up everybody, quarantine them, and move them up to like Iceland or wherever. And you're going to have like guerrilla productions that are just going to roll the dice and do it anywhere. But the majority of film is it operates on decent margins, but it's mid to low production budgets, and I think people are going to have to figure out new ways of doing things, and that may be new types of content, new procedures, just new genres. I mean, but that could be a bad thing, but it could also be a very exciting thing with a lot of opportunities that go along with it.
Well, we've seen a wave of screen-related movies, and I just saw one recently from Shudder called Host. That it's an hour-long horror film, all set over a Zoom call. I thought it was wildly creative. I thought, well, this is some, we can relate to it, because here, this is how we're doing all these meetings. I have to say, I actually don't mind not having to physically go to meetings, having the Zoom meetings.
I don't miss that at all.
I mean, I don't need a water or a Diet Coke when I'm sitting in a room about to have a meeting where the substance is about 20 minutes of that time. And, at least where I am with LA traffic is utterly the worst. Congratulations on the current occupant.
Thank you very much.
Cannot recommend it enough on Hulu. I want to thank you, Julius Ramsey. I want to thank our sponsor,
Thank you.
Storyblocks. If you want to be a filmmaker and sit where Julius is right now, go to storyblocks.com/film threat. They're a supporter of the show, and we thank them for their support. And Julius, I want to thank you for your time and being on the Film Threat podcast. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here and speak with you. And I'm a big fan, so can't wait to see who you get next.
Awesome. Take care.
Okay, you too. Talk to you later.